Hello and welcome to Outdoors and That. This video is about how to stuff a sleeping bag. I've got three different ways. We've got one non-compression sack, we've got a second compression sack, and then I finally got a compression sack that's also waterproof. So I'll show you some tips on how to do the three ways there. This is a relatively cheap synthetic sleeping bag, so it doesn't compress particularly well, and that's why we're going to use it as our example to see how good I can get these and the sizes they can get down to. When packing a sleeping bag, we want it to be waterproof. Unless you're 100% certain on the weather conditions and that your bag's not going to get wet, then I would always recommend waterproofing your bag. Now, the way to do this in a non-waterproof compression sack is to use a good old plastic bag, and I'll show you the techniques on doing that. When waterproofing our sleeping bag, first thing we want to do is to put the plastic bag inside the bag that you're going to be stuffing it into. And you really want to have it quite a loose fit, but have the top over the outside. And you want it to be a loose fit because you want to actually use the compression properties of the bag on the outside rather than trying to compress it into the plastic bag, because then it will stretch and break. So here we go. We are always going to start with the foot of the bag, and that allows the air to be forced out onto the top side of this. So next thing I'm doing is getting downwards force on my sleeping bag so I can really jam it into this bag. I've got it in there, but we've got lots of air still plenty of room for this to be compressed down. And the first little trick I'm going to show you is to, instead of tying a knot, we just want to twist and scrunch up the bag a little bit. And then I want to be able to press that and let the air out with my hands, but then grab it again and lock the plastic bag there. And you can see that when we're getting these dimples, that's showing that the bag is airtight. If I open it up again, it'll start to expand. So we want to have that control over the bag. So I'll compress this down and we'll see how small I can get it. Alright, so a couple of goes there. You can see I was also using the same kind of compression technique with my other hand to squeeze the bag, so we're reducing that size. I actually might get a little bit more out of this. And using up against your chest, that's another technique. Up against the table, really want to squeeze as much air as we can out of that. Then if I undo this, that's our new size for our sleeping bag. And when I put it in there as my protective cover, I just want to twist up the top lots and then tuck that underneath a piece of plastic like that. Roll it up in there, and now we have a really nice sealed container, not going to let any air back out of that bag. And then we've got our over the top sack to, when I put this into my pack, to give it a bit of protection so I'm not going to puncture that plastic bag, because that's really giving us the compression. Our next scenario is a compression sack but not waterproof, and this is probably the most common way or challenge that beginners have in stuffing their sleeping bag. So how are we going to do that? Well, again, we're going to use our plastic bag and we're going to put that in there with quite a lot of it in, and then just open up the very top. The aim of this is to use the outside layer as our compression layer and the inside layer as our waterproof layer, and that way we get the best of both worlds. So again, starting from the foot of my bag, I'm going to stuff that in there, and gravity really is your best friend. I also have a bit of a technique. I stuff around in a circle, kind of like you would knead a pizza dough, and I roll in with my fingers like this and then turn that into a fist and push down with a fist onto the bag. So grabbing the material stuffing it in. One of the things you want to be careful is when you're sliding it past the plastic that we don't put any holes in that. Alright, so we've got our bag in up to the top. One of the things that's good about this technique is that the bag is in a nice little spiral, but that means when we compress it, the air can also work its way out of that system. I've got plenty of plastic bag up the top here, and just like in the previous section, I'm going to compress that a little bit and twist it, but be able to control the compression in and out by squeezing or opening my hand and letting that happen there. For our drawstring, we just want to have the top section of our plastic bag poking out of the top there. Now that's pretty good, but we will compress this further using the compression straps. So I like to put my hand on the outside, use my chest to pull these towards me, roll it around. So we're going pretty good. One of the things that happens with a compression sack like this is we get our lumps here. So to make our bag smaller, I just want to push in on those and they will soften up and it'll help us get a bit more out of this compress. I think that's pretty good. To seal this off, I'm just going to twist this together. Then I'm going to tuck it underneath the side of our compression sack here. And there we go, a waterproof and compressed sleeping bag. Our final technique is using a waterproof compression sack. This is by far the best and then relatively cheap. So this one is a nylon. It's got silicone impregnated on both sides. So we call that a Sil Nylon fabric. And here we go. Again, always start with the foot. So one thing you'll notice about this, it is quite a lot narrower than our previous compression sacks, but that's going to work really well when we start to compress this one down. I'm going to use the straps to my advantage, pulling in towards me. Once that happens with this is it gets a bit crooked, so you can need to straighten it out as you go along. There we go, compressed. And you'll notice there's not actually that much difference in the size of these because it is a synthetic bag. It's not going to compress super duper, but with a down bag you would get more difference between the compression abilities of these sleeping bags. So hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.